Good day, everyone, and a warm welcome to I think it's our quarterly Shadowmatch system webinar. So the purpose of these webinars is really to touch on system functionalities that we don't necessarily use every day. And some of it we do use every day, but this is a very nice refresher to just remind you of what is available and how to find things, how and where to find things on the system. So I'll share the agenda shortly. I think all of you know me. My name is Lizette. I've got co-hosts Ruzan and Charmaine today helping with the chat. So you're also welcome to post some questions in the chat, and both Ruzan and Charmaine will attend to the chat. And if necessary, towards the end, we will obviously allow some time for questions. Then you can either ask your questions live, or Ruzan and Charmaine can position your question if you haven't already by that time received an answer on your question. So you would have noticed that your microphone is in the mute setting. This is just to allow for me to go through all the functionalities that I'm going to demo and that I'm going to be discussing. And towards the end, I will enable the setting for you to unmute and to ask your questions. We are also recording because, as you've seen in the past, we make this recording available, and we also slice and dice the recording so that we add some of the videos that we don't already have to the need help functionality on the system, so that if somebody searches for a benchmark or locking of a benchmark or whatever, that small clip is then available as a training video, and then they don't have to watch the entire webinar. That's probably about an hour or 45 minutes. So I think at this point, let me share my screen and just go through what we will be discussing today. So let me get there. There you are. So this is our agenda for today. I'm just going to move the faces so that you can I can see. So I'm just going to go through the list, and then we'll obviously tackle one by one. So I would like to look at why is it important to lock the benchmark. I know we've discussed this previously, but I want to also demonstrate why it is important to always have a locked benchmark. And please, I've noticed that a lot of our consultants are also attending today's session. This is something that you need to discuss with your clients, and that you need to make sure that your clients are also aware of. Then we're going to look at the recruitment specification, the interview pack, how to set the type. Now, setting the type means how to flag an individual on the system, either as an applicant and employee, and that also then links to how do I resign people that have left my company, resign them from the system and make sure that they fall into the resignation file. We'll touch on the WorkMatch report. We will look at the resignation risk profile and how to use that optimally. And then lastly, we're going to look at when you do a bulk purchase, and specifically for when a client does a bulk purchase, how do they track the worksheets? So I've also got it listed here on the side. So I'm going to now close the agenda. If you want to make a quick mental note of what we'll be going through, but I will obviously introduce each of these topics as we continue. So what I'm going to do is I've already logged into the system. So let me just close my PowerPoint, and then we'll go straight to Shadowmatch. So the file I'll be using today is also a file with data that has been sensitized. So the names and surnames and last names and everything you see obviously have been changed. So it's not real, it's real people, but with fictitious names, so that we just keep the confidentiality. So the first thing on our list that we will be looking at today is the locking of the benchmark, and why it is important to lock a benchmark. So I'm going to go to one of the entities in Company X. Let's go to the customer support supervisors entity, and I'm going to go straight to the benchmark. Now, dear participants, it's important to remember that obviously you can only lock a benchmark when it has a perfect or a good enough status. You will never be able to lock a benchmark with a status of being problematic. Now, just a side note, this is the statistical calculation or calculator that runs in the back end, looking at all the averages and how do we average out and how do we combine all the individuals in the benchmark. And this then shows you, as after all the calculations have been done, what is the statistical reliability and validity of the benchmark. So a perfect benchmark obviously is what you always strive for, because that means there's really high congruency in the behavioral patterns of the people that you've used for your benchmark. A good enough benchmark is also good to use. That's why it says good enough. Problematic benchmark is problematic. That means that there's not a statistical congruency, and the moment the benchmark is labeled as problematic, it will also tell you just below this indicator how to get this benchmark reliable and valid, who to remove statistically so that you get the benchmark either good enough or perfect. But that's not the purpose of this part of the discussion. What I would like to show you is this is where you lock the benchmark. Now, I think all of you know by now, but what I would like to show you is if I don't have a locked benchmark, what can I not use? And what functionality of which of the functionalities on the system don't work properly. So I'm going to leave it unlocked for now. And I'm going to go to my left navigation panel and I'm going to go to the recruitment specification. So the moment I click on recruitment specification, you will see that the system talks to me. The benchmark needs to be locked in order to generate the recruitment specification. So, okay, I can't go any further. I need to go back and I need to lock the benchmark. Before I do that, I just want to show you something else. If I, for example, go to my employees, my list of employees in this company, and I say, but I want to go to Barbara Minton, let's go to her results, and I want to get her WorkMatch report. The moment I click on that, the system talks to me. This report will only be generated if the benchmark for customer support supervisors is locked. To view the benchmark, click here. So there's quick access to the benchmark. If you click there, I'm going to take the longer route. Let me just deselect Barbara's results in my left navigation panel, and I'm going to go back to my benchmark. So you can see that already there are two functionalities that I cannot use because my benchmark is not locked. That's why it's important to really utilize the system to its fullest to work with a locked benchmark. So let's do that. Let's lock this benchmark. Now you can see the benchmark was locked by me. Now, this is another point of discussion. Only the person who has locked the benchmark can unlock the benchmark. I think you know this by now. Now, this might from time to time be a challenge because I might lock this benchmark. Tomorrow I resign, I leave to another company. Somebody takes over. They want to update this benchmark and now Lizette is no longer available. What now? Then, if you then click on this, it will tell you, obviously, if I now unlock it, it will unlock because I've locked it. But if Charmaine comes and she clicks on that, the system will not unlock because she's not Lizette. And if the system will then prompt her to say, but Lizette needs to unlock this benchmark. If Lizette is not available, you can ask head office to unlock this benchmark. And that then automatically sends an email to the Shadowmatch head office. And obviously, the system will ask you for a reason for unlocking this benchmark. And if we deem that the reason is valid, we will unlock. And otherwise, we will just give you a call or send an email and say, this is not really a reason for unlocking. So we will obviously get into a communication with the user who has requested the unlocking of the benchmark. So that concludes the locking and the unlocking of the benchmark. It's really important that you check in with your customers and your clients and make sure that they have the benchmarks locked. Just a last comment on this. That's why we don't allow for the WorkMatch report to be generated. Because the WorkMatch report, and we will look at that a little bit later, looks at the comparison of an individual to the benchmark, and that's a report for the individual. And if this benchmark is changed and somebody in the business now comes and they request a WorkMatch report for a second time on the same day with a different benchmark, an individual might get 2 or 3 WorkMatch reports with different recommendations for development. And then it becomes a bit of a confusing situation. So a locked benchmark just says it's now stable and all the reports we generate are now with the same benchmark. The recruitment specification is for this benchmark. The interview pack uses this benchmark. And it just makes sure that we have consistency and that when we work with a benchmark, it is stable for that round of interviews or for that recruitment specification. So that's the locking of the benchmark and why it is important to lock the benchmark. What I would like to look at now is the recruitment specification. So let's go to the recruitment specification in the left navigation panel. Now, I don't know who of you have used this, but this is a wonderful application on the system. And the recruitment specification is something that you can use when you have a round of interviews coming up, when you work with agencies who provide candidates to your business to make a decision on a vacancy and an appointment. This is something that you can add to the specification that you send to your recruitment agency or to the personnel agency or to whoever is helping you with the recruitment for a specific vacancy in your organization. So let's go through the steps. So it will ask for the job or the position. Now, in this case, we are looking at the customer support supervisors. So I'm going to use that. Who's the manager? And what is the job description? So let's just keep it short for the purposes of the demonstration. Let's just, and meeting facilitation. That's really just to keep it short. But this is obviously what you will do is you will make a proper list and a description of the job description, especially if this goes to an external company or an external party helping with recruitment. That person needs to know what is this job all about. And then this checkbox here, email me if the shadow changes. Obviously, if somebody then comes and they unlock the benchmark, they've requested for the unlocking, the person who created this job specification needs to be notified that the benchmark has now changed. So you might want to update the recruitment specification document. And then obviously you add the email address. So let's just put my email address. Great, let's create. So now what the system does is it creates the recruitment specification for the customer support supervisors. Now there's my document. I can download this document. I can obviously email this document, and I can also edit this document. So this now says, what is the recruitment specification for this job? There's an introduction. These are the tasks or the job description that I've just typed. So can you see, the more comprehensive, the better, because this becomes part of your document that can now be emailed to someone. And then the system says, okay, these are the critical habits. For this job, the following were identified as critical habits and need to be present in the behavior of the candidate in order to ensure success in the job. And now it lists the critical habits. Obviously, the system has now looked at the benchmark and it now says these habits need to be present. Resilience with a description, team inclination, discipline, conflict handling, altruism, conceptual application, task efficiency, and attitude. So it gives a description. And now it also comes and it says the following habits should preferably not be prominent: individual inclination. We preferably don't want people in this job that are strong on being individually inclined. And the following attitude should not be displayed: unaggressive, kind, and uninvolved behavior. That's your category 4, for those of you that can now remember the attitude chart. So this is the job specification. Now, I know a question might be, but if I send this specification to an external party or a recruitment agency or in the business to someone, and they don't have the Shadowmatch results, how are they going to work with this? Or I might send this to someone that's not using Shadowmatch. How are they going to measure these habits? Now, obviously, we want them to use Shadowmatch. But you must remember, this gives them a step ahead of another recruitment agency not using the system. Because by just looking at, I need somebody with resilience, I need somebody that's team inclined, I need somebody with discipline, even if they have not done Shadowmatch, and even if they don't have a Shadowmatch result for that person, just in their initial engagements with a candidate, they can already listen and look out for these behavioral patterns. So when they then do send candidates to you as the company using Shadowmatch, you should see that when they start doing Shadowmatch, you might find that you get better matches and more candidates that match your benchmark, because they had a brief of what needs to be present and what must not be present. Even if they don't use Shadowmatch, this gives them a very good idea already of what you are looking for as the behavioral patterns in candidates applying for this position. So that then concludes our recruitment specification. Now, linked to this, now you've got your list of your short list of candidates. You've got people that have applied for the job. Now I would like to show you the interview pack. So let's go to our list of applicants for this job in customer support supervisors. And let's look at our matches. We can see that Amanda is a good match, an 8 out of 10 match. And then I've got a 4 out of 10 and I've got a 1 out of 10. So if I've got one vacancy to fill, and this is my list, my short list, I'm definitely going to look at interviewing Amanda because she's a very good match to my benchmark. She's an 8 out of 10 match. She's one of the applicants or the candidates. So I would like to go and say, let's request the interview pack that we can use in the panel interview when we do interview Amanda for the job in customer support supervisors. So I click on results. And now where do I find the interview pack? Right at the bottom of the individual result of the individual interview. So I'll click on interview. And now the system says, for an interview, and there's a nice description. So if it's the first time you're using this, please don't fear. Everything is very well explained and it guides you through the process. So for an interview, the system allows you to set up an interview panel. This is the group who will conduct the interview with a candidate. And then it says the system then generates a set of 10 experience-based questions to interview the candidate. These questions are based on the benchmark behaviors necessary for the task, the job, or the assignment. And now you can say, don't show this message again. So this will never pop up again. Or for now, let me not click that. Let's just say I want to create the interview pack. So now I'm going to create the interview pack. I choose the date of the interview. Let's say we will interview tomorrow. No, let's say we are going to interview on the 25th, which is tomorrow. The time of the interview will be 8 a.m. in the morning. What is the venue? It will be the boardroom, head office. And now I go to my next step. Now I choose the interview panel. Now, if for any reason there has in the past been a panel created, then those will populate. So I can now say, no. None of these people are available for the interview. No, they no longer work here. So I'm going to delete all of these panel members. Some of them were here, some of them have resigned. Now I can say, okay, who's my interview panel? Let's start. First person. Let's say it will be Charmaine. Email address. Contact number. Let's hope they're going to use that one. Okay, Charmaine, you've got a new number. And then what is Charmaine's position? Charmaine's position is then a manager, or she's a psychologist, or she's from HR, or other allows me then to say, what is her position? Let's say she's a human resource representative, and I add the interviewer. So now, obviously, I can now add another person. For now, I'm just going to add a second person. Let's keep it short. Let's just add my name. And my position is, let's say I'm the manager of the division, and I say add interviewer. Okay, good. We've got two people. That's the panel. Let's go next step. Now the system says, select the members of the interview panel who will be interviewing Amanda. So let's say, for example, I've listed 10 panel members. But for this round of interviews, only 2 people or only 3 people are going to be present. Then this allows me to say, okay, both Charmaine and Lizette will be present. It might have just been me or just Charmaine. And this step allows me to say, for this round of interviews, who's going to be available? Then I say, next step, who's going to facilitate the interview? Let's say Charmaine is going to be the facilitator because she's the HR representative. Next step. Now the system says, I've created the pack. I'm now going to email this interview pack to the panel members. So I can go back to the previous step. I can cancel and start all over again, or I can create and send the interview pack. So let's do that. Now you can see the pack has now been emailed to both of us. And now it gives me the updated details of the interview, the upcoming interview, applicant, the position, the date, the time, the venue, who's the facilitator, interviewer, and then I can still edit, or I can view the interview panel, or I can now just leave it. What will happen now is tomorrow, when that time appears, when that time starts and the interview starts, an hour after 8, this screen will change and it will allow me, the interview facilitator, to now capture the score of the interview of this candidate. And the system then keeps the score. So if I have more than one candidate, I have 3 or 4 candidates, and it's the same panel and the same interview questions, I can come and I can capture the scores, and the system will then visually show me, of your 3 or 4 candidates, these were the interview scores. So I can now, as the manager or as the HR representative or the user of the system, look at the match against the benchmark, look at the interview score and say, okay, the best person to appoint is Amanda, because she's got an 8 out of 10 match to the benchmark, and for an interview, she scored 83%. So this just completes the process of looking at the Shadowmatch score, the match against the benchmark, looking at the interview score, and then making my decision. Because then I have the interview as well as the match. And if you use Skills Grid, you have the skills match. You can really make an informed decision to appoint the best candidate for the role, not just based on the Shadowmatch, but also based on the interview score from the panel members. So there are other interviews also talking about the other videos talking about the interview, but this just gives you an idea of the steps that you go through to set up the interview pack for interviewing an individual. Great. So what I would like to do now is, let me just go back to the home folder. So I would like to now just demonstrate how you set the type. Now, I know this terminology sounds a bit funny. That's probably for lack of a better word that the development team could use, and what do you actually now call it? But setting the type is labeling your individuals in your business so that you know who's who. So let's go back to our customer support supervisors. Let's use that one. And let's say we had applicants, and Amanda was the successful applicant for this interview, 8 out of 10 match. Remember, she scored very well in her interview. So I want to make Amanda an employee because we've appointed her now. She's no longer an applicant. She's now an employee. Now, if you look at your left navigation panel, you will see that you've got resignees, you've got applicants, and you've got employees, and then you've got all individuals. Now, if you click on all individuals, it gives you a list of everyone. That will be employees, and there can you see type, and that will show you what is this person's type. Is it an applicant? Is it part of a benchmark, or is it an employee? So let's go to our applicants, and let's say I want to make Amanda an employee on the system. So I select Amanda. You will see that your little hamburger menu opens up. You use those 3 dots. And now I say, okay, I want to make her an employee. So that's as easy as that. So I make Amanda an employee. Remember to always unmark the individual. Otherwise, the system's going to remember that you want to work with her result. That just gives you a clean slate to now work with other functionalities or other individuals in this file. So I've unmarked. There you are. Can you see Amanda has now changed from a dotted line to a solid line, which means she's now an employee. The red ones are our benchmark people. Now, so that's how you set the type. So please also, clients and dear consultants working with clients, help your clients to manage their files so that you can, with one eyeball, see how many people are applicants, how many people are employees, how many people are benchmark, how many people have resigned. So that's a very nice way to manage your data so that it's clean, and so that if you click on employees, you can immediately see, okay, there are 5 people. I've got 5 employees. Who are my applicants? And maybe at some point you want to take the applicants and you want to archive them so that they don't clutter your file. But then you know, I click on applicants and I archive those 2 people because they are, and it's quite easy to do. So I will select them and I will then go and I will archive these individuals. So then they are also out of my sight. They're not going to bother me. So if I have a next round of interviews, I work with a clean file of applicants. And I know these were in previous round, they didn't match, or we might have appointed them elsewhere in the organization. So it's important that you manage your data so that your system doesn't become cluttered and very top heavy with unnecessary data. So let's just cancel, because I'm not going to do that now. I just want to unmark. So that's setting the type. Linked to this setting type, I would like to just show you the how to resign an individual. Now, obviously, it's not as easy as just clicking a button and bye-bye, there you go. There's obviously a process that follows when somebody resigns and they give their resignation letter, but resigning them on the system so that their data is no longer part of our working data. So for that, allow me to just go to the demo file. So you will all recognize this file. This is the sandbox environment. So what I would like to demonstrate now is how to resign an individual. They've resigned, so I'm resigning them on the system so that they're no longer part of my working data, and how to then work with the resignation benchmark, or we refer to that as the resignation risk profile. So for this exercise, let me use the sales department. Let's go to applicants. So what I would like to do now is I'm first going to make sure that that all my people that I need to be employees are employees. So I think Scott is still an applicant, so we've appointed him. Donna needs to be in my employee file. I think the rest I've got, let's just see. And why did I not do this before the meeting? Because you all know it's the sandbox, so it resets. So even if I did this beforehand, it would have reset, so I would have had to do this anyway. So I'm going to make them employees. Unmark all. Let's go to our employee file. Great. So these are our employees. I'm missing somebody. Let me just quickly see. I'm missing Mary. Let's just see. Can I see her name? Yeah, there you are. So she's also an employee. Let me just mark her as an employee, make employee. There you are. Great. So let's go to my employees. Now, from this list of employees, 4 of these people have resigned. So let's say Don has resigned, Marianne has resigned, Donna has resigned, and Mary has resigned. So I'm cleaning up my file now. I want to make them as they have resigned. So exactly the same action. I select these individuals. I go to my hamburger menu and I say move to resigned. So it's the same action as making somebody an employee. I just move them to the resigned file in my entity. So I'm going to move them to resigned. I'm going to unmark all. And now you will see, if you look at the list in the left, resignees 4. We didn't have any resignees. Now we have 4. So now I can always go back and say, okay, these people have resigned. You can also take them out of this file and archive them. However, keep in mind, if you remove these people from the resigned file, you no longer have the opportunity to build a resignation benchmark or a resignation risk profile. Now, what is a resignation risk profile? The system says these people have resigned. Now, let me just make a side comment. I use the resignation risk benchmark so that the system can tell me what are the habits that we don't want, or what are the habits that are a risk for people to resign. So if somebody resigned not because they were unsuccessful or unhappy or just wanted another job or whatever reason might be, if they resigned because their spouse was transferred to Cape Town and they didn't have a choice, yes, resign that individual. But my recommendation is to then take that individual, let's play it's Mary, and say, let me archive Mary. Because Mary did not resign because of being unhappy, being a poor performer, being whatever we might label or whatever we might list as the reasons for the resignation. She resigned because she didn't have a choice. Her spouse was transferred. I don't want Mary's habits to contribute to my resignation risk profile, because I want to use a resignation risk profile that says these are the habits that don't work in my environment, because people with these habits have resigned. So you need to cleverly manage your resignation file so that it always has a list of individuals that resigned for reasons that are in their control, In other words, they could stay, but they didn't want to. They could stay, but they didn't like the manager. They could stay, but they decided to rather not, even if they didn't have another job, I'm just going to quit. Reasons outside of their control is being transferred, or maybe, you know, winning the lotto and you don't have to work anymore. So there are other reasons that's not necessarily reasons that you want to contribute to a resignation risk profile. So I'm not going to archive Mary. I'm just going to cancel. And let me just unmark. There you are. So now we have a resignation risk profile. But before we look at this resignation risk profile, I would like to just show you, let me just go and do this, make Sean an applicant. So what this system now allows me to do, let's say Scott was an applicant. He applied for a job in sales. We can see that he's a very good match. He's a 9 out of 10 match to the benchmark of the top performers in sales. So let's look at these results. So the system says, Scott Grower, if we look at his match against the benchmark of top performers, 9 out of 10, a very high match with a benchmark. But wait a minute, let me also look at what is his risk to resign. So I want to also match him to the resignation benchmark before I just appoint, just to be aware of that. That might change my mind if there are other good matches as well, and I need to choose between 2 people to appoint. So where do I get my resignation benchmark? I get it here, resignation risk profile. And that will only appear, dear participants, if I have people in my resigned file here. Remember, where must the system get it? I need to tell the system, these are people that have resigned, and then it compiles my resignation risk profile. So let's look at this. Let's look at Scott's comparison to the resignation risk profile. The system says his risk to resign is 70%. This indicates the risk to resign. So he's a very good match to my top performers, but he's also got a high risk of resigning. So I need to now decide, am I going to appoint him and immediately after appointment put him on a PDP of where he might have a mismatch with the top performers, or am I rather not going to take the chance? Because I can see time is a high risk. Attitude is a high risk because it's not as strong as that of the top performers. And I can look at this and I can eyeball and say, you know what, attitude is dominant in the same quadrants. I'm not too worried about this. He is a bit faster than the people that have resigned, and he's a good match to the top performers. So that's not an area of concern. I know this, but it's not a problem. If I look at his match against the top performers who are currently top performers in my area, it's a good match. And time is a green indicator. Okay, I'm going to appoint. So that just helps you. Now, just keep in mind, dear applicants, if you've, dear participants, now I'm calling you applicants, dear participants, if you've got the Shadowmatch match, you've got the interview score, and you can look at what is the resignation risk, keeping in mind that your resignation file must be up to date, gives you a hell of a lot of information to really make an informed decision as to, do I appoint? Don't I appoint? And if I do appoint, where do I start with development? Because if I decide to appoint and I start with a personal development program as soon as we've done the onboarding process, it will definitely prolong Scott's stay in the organization, and it will definitely help with performance in this division where we are going to appoint the individual. So that covers our resignation risk analysis. The last thing that I would like to look at is our WorkMatch report. So let's use Scott because this is what we're working with now. So if I go to the WorkMatch report, I decide I am going to take Scott. Let's see what the system says. The WorkMatch report is a report for the individual. And after appointment, I can give Scott this report and say, Scott, this is how you compare to the top performers in your division, people that have been in the job for a longer time, who is performing well. And this is really to help you to also become a star performer in our environment. So this WorkMatch now gives the introduction. It tells Scott, overall, how do you match to the top performers? The critical match, the most active habits of the top performers, the conceptual fitness, the general time utilization, When working with problems, how did they spend their time and how do you compare to that? The task efficiency, the attitude. And then what I want to get to is the conclusion. And now the system says, now that you understand some of the critical behaviors for personal success in this workplace, Shadowmatch has a recommendation. Consider doing one of the Shadowmatch personal development programs. And now the system says the following development programs are recommended: conflict handling and resilience. And the individual can immediately go to his personal portal and he can request this program. If he's part of a business where personal development programs are rolled out and are implemented, then he can go to HR or to the manager and say, you know what, I've looked at my match, the system and the report says I should do one of these PDPs. I want to start with resilience. Can I start? How do I go about? If the business is not using PDPs, the individual can still all by himself go to his portal and purchase one of these PDPs, choose a mentor and embark on the process of development. So this is a very nice report to give to an individual that starts in an organization, but also to people in an organization that's not performing up to standard and that we really want to invest in their development. Make sure that your benchmark is up to date. Make sure that the benchmark is locked and then request the WorkMatch report for the individuals, helping them to understand how they compare to the successful people and where they can develop. So let me just stop sharing my screen. The last thing that I want to cover, and I think I've covered everything on the list, if I quickly look at my list here, is just for people who do bulk purchases. Now, clients and consultants working with clients, the moment you do a bulk purchase, now remember a bulk purchase is you purchase 50 Shadowmatch worksheets or you purchase 20 Shadowmatch worksheets. And the way we set up the entity on the system is we load it with 20 worksheets. So the company has got 20 worksheets and they can't use more than that. So it's also a nice way of managing payment and making sure that people don't use what they don't pay for. So it's a nice risk mitigation strategy. But we do get questions. I've purchased 52 worksheets, let's say 52, and I don't know how many I've got left. Where do I see that and where do I track that? So let me share my screen again and show you. I've just made a screenshot because I don't want to obviously go into the system because this we need to find where there's real data. We don't have this on the sandbox. So in the company, in the entity where you've got your worksheet invitations. So the moment you click on worksheet invitations, you get to this screen. And most of you will recognize this screen because this is where you put the first name, the last name, the email, and this is where you choose what does the person need to receive when they finish their worksheet. This is where it will be indicated. So Shadowmatch invitations limit 1 of 56. So this company purchased 56 and it says 1 of 56. So the moment they get to 56 of 56, they won't be able to send an invite. The system will, the notification will change and say, you've reached your limit, purchase more worksheets. So this is where this is the easiest way and the quickest way to see on a bulk purchase, how many worksheets are left and how many worksheets have I used. Now keep in mind, the system tracks the worksheets the moment the worksheet is sent out. If you have worksheets that you've sent out, but nobody has started the worksheet. In other words, you've sent the invitations, they're lying on your list, but it hasn't been started. You can delete those invitations and then it will again become available to use. Because if it's not started, you can delete that name and you can reuse that worksheet invitation. So you might reach 56 of 56 because you've sent 56 invitations. But after 56 of the 56, 10 people have not started their worksheet. So you can go and delete those invitations. It will become available for you to send to 10 other people. So we track the usage of the worksheet the moment it is started. Then you can't use that again. So let me log into the system just to show you. I just want to close this. I am logged in still. So let's just go invites and codes. I don't think we will see it here. Obviously, we will see the screen. So this is where you will see unfinished worksheets, obviously. And this is where you will see codes. We refer to codes. It's the worksheets that have been sent. Not here. Let's just do one. Just give me a moment. Yeah, okay, great. The next message, not necessary, submit. So now this is where you will see, this is the emails that have been sent. So this has not been started. So I can go and say, you know what, but I've sent this to Lizette and she's not doing anything with it. I can rather use this because I've done a bulk purchase. I've sent this invite to somebody, but it's not yet recognized as a worksheet that was used. So it's actually in actual fact still available as part of my bulk purchase because it's not used. So you can go and you can say, you know what, Lizette has done nothing with this. What's the action here? I'm going to remove this. So now it disappears. Okay, this is now because I'm in the demonstration file. It will obviously disappear and then it will become available on your bulk purchase to send again. If Lizette now for some reason logs in and tries to use the worksheet, she will get an error message telling her that your invite is no longer, because I've removed that invitation. So I think I just wanted you to understand, if you do a bulk purchase, the easiest way to track is on the worksheet invite screen. The system will tell you how many you've got available. And the moment you reach your limit, there will be a message. It will obviously then prompt the user to get in contact with their consultant or to email head office then to purchase more worksheets, because there's nothing they can do. They have to purchase more worksheets unless they go and remove some of the invites and use them. But if they've all been used, all the worksheets have been completed, the only other thing they can do is to then purchase more worksheets. I think what I'm going to do now, let me just stop share. Before I open the floor for questions, let me just check the chat and then I'll give to, I see Rosanna has answered, so I'm not going to read all the chats now. Let me allow you, Rosanna, is there something you need to position or has it been answered? Looks like it's been answered.
Yes, I think we've answered all the questions.
Great, thanks, Rosanna. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to enable the setting for you to unmute your microphone, and then here, any questions, it doesn't have to just relate to the topics we've discussed today. If it's any other system-related question or comment, you're welcome. Let me go and give you access. You can unmute your microphone. So please feel free. The floor is open. You can just indicate by hand, yes, Anne-Marie, or just unmute. Yes.
Suzette, thanks for the recap. I just want to know, we've got a client who've been using Shadowmatch a lot, but we've been doing all the administration. They are considering doing the training, becoming administrators. Can we send her the codes so that she can send the emails to the people she wants to do the Shadowmatch worksheet? Okay.
Yes, you can. You will use the send codes to administrator part of the system. So say again.
She's not an administrator yet.
No, but it doesn't mean she's a Shadowmatch administrator. It means
Okay.
somebody that's going to administrate the codes. So
I understand.
Yeah. So you will just go to your, I've logged out now, but you will send, there's an option send to administrator, and you will use that option.
Okay.
So that doesn't mean Shadowmatch administrator. It means somebody that's going to admin the send of the codes. Yeah. So that can be an HR manager. It can be a recruitment agency, whoever is going to give those worksheet codes to somebody to complete. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I think what I want to just add to that, Anne-Marie, it's good. It's important that when you do that, that when they use that code, because obviously if you use that option, you're going to use codes like we had in the past. Those of you that used Shadowmatch long ago, we worked with codes and not the link, the worksheet invitation link. It is advisable that people that use that code, they will have the option to also capture an email address. So it is advisable that each individual using a code capture their own email address, because if they don't do that, they don't get access to their personal portal, because we use the email address as the unique identifier in Shadowmatch. So if they just use a code, there are other ways for them to get access to their portal, but then they need to remember, you know, security questions. It's better for them just to use the code, capture their email address, and going forward, they don't have to remember a code. They can just log in with their email address and a password.
Okay.
So you can do that. Yes.
Cool.
Thanks for the question. Great. Let's see. Are there other questions? Any other comments? Doesn't look like it. Thanks, Rosanna. I see that you have handled the questions in the chat. Thank you very much. I think what I would like to highlight is, remember that we don't have these sessions every month, but it doesn't mean that you should not get in contact with us. So if you do have a question, please get in contact with your consultant for the clients attending today's session. If you're a consultant and you have a question, please get in contact with us. You know, we don't have to wait for these sessions, but it's great. What we do is we obviously make a list of frequently asked questions and frequent requests, so that when we have these system sessions, we deal with it, so that we have the recording and that we, in a forum like this, we can demonstrate and we can guide people as to how to use the system and how to use all the functionalities of the system. So, and if there is something that you think we should be covering in the next session, please send us an email and say, you know what, I get these requests from my clients quite frequently. Can you please make a little video, so that we add that video to the list of need help videos? Because that's ultimately our aim, is to have the need help library as complete as possible. So that if somebody logs into the system and they go to need help and they search worksheet, all the videos related to worksheets, worksheet invitation, deleting an invitation, and pops up, and they can watch a 1 or 2 minute video. And that helps them to navigate their way, because sometimes we do the training and we forget, because people do the training to get it over and done with, so that they can get access to the system, and then they don't really pay the necessary attention. At least all those videos are available under the need help functionality. Great, let's see, last round. Any other questions? Anne-Marie, you are still unmuted. Have you got another question or not?
No, Lizette, not a question, but just I want to share this great feedback. I had a team session last week with a team that's somewhere in Joburg, somewhere in Cape Town. And after we did the team session, I got such great feedback about how they now understood each other better and how they managed to change the way they interact. And within a week, they've seen productivity increase in the division. So yeah, that was just awesome. So thanks again for a fantastic system.
Wow, that's amazing feedback. Thanks for sharing the feedback, Anne-Marie. It's so nice to see that, you know, there's actually something happening, and so quickly. I hope your team session was not with a black screen, because we sometimes find that people all switch off their videos and then we do an entire team session just looking at ourselves. But at least if they found it valuable, that's fantastic. And thanks for the feedback. We don't always get feedback. We know that the system works wonderful, and we know that it's very accurate and it's very valuable for the people on the receiving end, but we don't always get the feedback. So thank you very much. Maybe just a last story from my side. One of our colleagues did a team session with an exco on Monday, and she obviously facilitated the team session, and then she stayed for the day. She was invited to stay for the whole day of the strategic planning and strategic session. And she said it was fascinating to see what she learned from the Shadowmatch team session, how she could see those behaviors pan out during the day. One of the ladies was very, very soft habits. She was in the cautious group, the subgroup, the cautious group. And her conceptual fitness was a bit lower than the rest of the team. And she said it was amazing to see throughout the day, with all the planning and all the discussions, how she always had the cautious approach, and how she kept on asking questions of things that she didn't understand, and how she could see how the conceptual fitness and the cautious behavior 100% came out in the discussions and in the way she approached the challenges they had throughout the day. So it was very interesting for her to say. So she says it was the first time she actually sat for the day, because normally you do the team session and you leave, and how she could see how everything that they discussed and the Shadowmatch results, how accurate it was, and how she could see it happening in practice, and how these subgroups, the last thing she said is they don't have anybody in the action and task group. And it's a new CEO in this company, and his biggest frustration is nothing happens. They have meetings and meetings, and lots of talks, but nothing happens. And when they looked at the team session, she said, guys, but that is why nothing happens. Somebody needs to take action. So it was a real revelation for them to see, oh, wow, you know, we need to manage ourselves differently because we don't have anybody in that group. So that must become an agenda item. We need to actively decide on an action plan and what are we going to do. So just a little bit of a feedback from our side. So thanks, Anna-Marie. It's good to hear that you also had a good experience. And it's very energizing, these team sessions, and even more so if you get that positive feedback. Great. I think that's it for today. Let me just check if there's, thank you for this information. Thank you very much, Rieta, and thanks for the feedback. I hope you all have a good afternoon. I hope you all have a good week, and we'll see you soon in one of the other sessions. Go well. Cheers.